Assalamualaikum, my name is BARIAH Omar. Today my groupmates and I will be presenting about astronomy, contribution and its impact of sciences in Western world by the Muslim. And based on my reading, astronomy knowledge was found as early as like 2 million years ago, but it came to the picture, or it was literally written by the Indians, dated back 2,500 years ago. And this text, considered as the oldest astronomy book, known as Surya Siddhartha. And this text by the Indians, they wrote like basic trigonometry, mathematics, decimal system. They talk about gravity, and it was found 1,000 years earlier than Muslim does. And they also talk about the planet diameter and prediction. And as time goes by, this is where Islamic scholars came into the picture, especially the prominent figure like Al-Khwarizmi and Muhammad Al-Farizi, and they also adapted few texts from Greek Hellenistic culture mostly from the Indians themselves, and they translated into Arabic and Persian. Mostly it was like a translated work. And astronomical research was hugely and mainly supported during the Abbasid Caliphate, especially during the reign of Caliph Al-Ma'mun. And Baghdad and Damascus were considered as the city of knowledge during that time. During 770 AD, Caliph Al-Mansur, especially during his reign in Baghdad, he started to accept the knowledge and work from Indian sources and Hellenistic culture. And he even asked the astronomers and philosophers to do a translation from Sanskrit into Arabic and also into Persian. And they started to research these Indian astronomical methods, and they use it, but they also filter the sources and only accept the idea that align with Islamic teaching, and mostly came from Indian astronomical methods. But as time goes by, when Al-Khwarizmi and Al-Fazari came into the picture, these two prominent historical figures, and they are both very much dedicating their life in this astronomical field. So these Islamic scholars, they started to introduce and develop their own book and their own work. So they invented this book, and in this book they started to talk about the rotation of Earth. But mind that they also accepted few sources from Indian as well, Indian and Greek. So again, they started to talk about the movement of the sun, and they talk about the movement of the moon, rotation of the Earth, and they research about the 5 ancient planets during that time, which is Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. And again, when Islamic civilization, they tend to broaden up their horizon into very much so field, they started to create their own device, but again still adapted from earliest or ancient culture like Greek and Indian as well. So they create their own device, and my groupmates will talk about this much more detail, but I'll just talk about this briefly. They create their own device like astrolabe, which is like a navigation or like a compass. It's not really like a compass, but it is to navigate the altitude. And as time goes by, as they broaden up their horizon in this field, they started to create their own device, but again still adapted from Hellenistic culture and further developed in the medieval Islamic world. It is called as astrolabe. It is like a compass, but it's slightly different, and it's to navigate the altitude. But mainly, the Muslim, they created this device just to mainly as a way of finding a qiblat at first, but also they use it to identify the stars or planet, to measure the altitude above horizon of a celestial body, and to measure day and night.
Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So I will continue about the history of Muslim astronomy. Okay, actually, when we talk about astronomy, it was another branches of education. So we also need to think about the history of education in Islam also, and the progress development about this history. It believes it start from around 9th to 15th century, when many historians discover around 10,000 manuscripts and 1,000 instruments by the Muslim scholars around the world. That is the one who been recorded. We don't know if they do have the unrecorded one. Alright, if you can see my screen, I compare with two caliphate, two first caliphate after the Khulafa Rashidin. The first one is Umayyah. They facing with Shia and many rebellions. So during this caliphate, they did not manage to have a progressive development to their education, because they are facing with so many rebellions. During the Abbasid, Islam already strong and have strong base and many more things, so they can develop the education system as well. And during that time, it was considered as the golden age of Islamic civilization. Many new branches of education, and also many new great scholars. Okay, moving to the next part. Okay, the Abbasid Caliphate. Alright, during the Caliph Al-Mansur, the second Khalifa of Abbasid Caliphate, he moved the capital city from Baghdad. And actually, Baghdad was a strategic place, not only for trading, but also for cultural hub and education hub. Why? Because as you can see in this map, Baghdad is located at the middle of the road from India to the northern Africa, to the Middle East, and to the Byzantine Empire. So it can be like R&R for the other civilization to continue their journey after that. And that's why the Baghdad become a very good developed city soon after, during the reign of Khalif al-Mansur. He also improved the education systems like observatory lab, specific for the astronomy and astrological studies. They also have public libraries like Batul Hikmah, mosque, and lots of madrasa. Next one. Okay, I will talk about the madrasa, or known as Islamic college. Oops. Okay, madrasa. Actually, before madrasa, they have two more education hub, like mosque, libraries, and madrasa. So I will talk about the mosque first. Okay, the first one, mosque, is not only for religious studies, but also for other studies like philosophy and so on. And at mosque also, they have some halaqah together. They gather around and to make face-to-face study. For example, at Masjid Jami Al-Mansur. Okay, the second one, libraries. Many historians say that the libraries during the Abbasid Caliphate was the most, how to say, the most advanced during their time. As you can see, the libraries is not only the place to keep the book and to study, but it also become the important place for research and also become important place for translation. Hundreds of translation books from other language translated to Arabic. Alright, the third one is madrasah. Okay, madrasah usually being built on waqaf soil. So at madrasah, it was a learning center for the law subject, philosophy, logic and arithmetic, astronomy and astrology. For example, madrasah and nizamiyah. Okay, next one. I will talk about the Baitul Hikmah, house wisdom. Okay, it was not just a public libraries, but it also a translation hub. And during the Khalif Al-Mansur, Khalif Al-Mansur, he built Baitul Hikmah before it continued by Harun al-Rashid. And finally, during the Khalifah Al-Ma'mun, he changed totally Baitul Hikmah. He reformed Baitul Hikmah to become international hub for study. So he asked his people to go all around the world to collect hundreds of useful texts from Greece, Chinese, Sanskrit, and Persian, and then translated it to Arabic. He also collected the manuscript from Aristotle and Ptolemy, and Muslim scholars finally managed to, how to say, to study deep into what have been done by the older scholar. And among the work that we translated is astronomy and astrology. Okay, the next one, the result. Okay, what is the result from this, I can say, like, education revolution? So many great scholars was born, like Manu Musa brothers, Al-Jazari, who was responded to build many new things, and Abdul Rahman Sufi and Al-Khawarizmi. Hundreds of manuscripts and books were published, many knowledge being developed, such as Al-Falaq, and the Quran, Hadith, and Hisab, and etc. And also regarding the astronomy, during that time they managed, among the achievement that they got, is they managed to determine the size of the Earth, and they also find out the speed of light is actually faster than the speed of sound. And also they managed to discover the axis of the Earth and many more things. We can just simplify this achievement. Alright, and last but not least, after the collapse of this empire, this caliphate, their work been translated by the European, by the Western, and redeveloped to our nowadays, and we actually live with their belongings. Alright, that's all for me. Thank you.
Moving to the development of astronomy among Muslim scholars, we can see that after the Islamic conquest under the early Caliphate, Muslim scholars started to absorb Hellenistic and Indian astronomical knowledge. The development of Muslim astronomy can be divided into three stages, the first being early Islam, second is the Golden Age of Islam, and third, the later period. Under the first development, early Islam, we can see there have been many translations of sources into Arabic language, namely from India, Zij al-Sidin, which were translated by Muhammad ibn Ibrahim al-Fazari and Yaqub ibn Tariq after 770 Common Era, with the assistance of Indian astronomers who visited the court of Caliph al-Mansur in 770. Second Indian sources that were translated into Arabic language was Zij al-Shah, which is a collection of astronomical tables based on Indian parameters, compiled in Sassanid Persia over 2 centuries. Fragments of text during this period indicate that Arab adopted the sine function inherited from India in place of the chords of arcs used in Greek trigonometry. According to David A. King, in his book Astronomy in the Service of Islam, he says that in Islam, as in no other religion in the history of mankind, scientific procedures have been applied to assist the organization of various aspects of religious rituals. These are, first, a calendar whose periods are based on the moon, second, 5 daily periods whose times are based on the sun, third, a sacred direction whose goal is a specific location. Other than that, there are Hellenistic influence on the translation work based on Greek works from Hipparchus and Ptolemy. So the second part is the Golden Age of Islam, and under the Golden Age of Islam there are 3 themes that prompted astronomical research. The first one is called the doubt on Ptolemy's theory, because in the early 9th century under Abbasid Caliphate al-Ma'mun, an academy for astronomical research was established and named the House of Wisdom, and resulted in Baghdad and Damascus being the center for observatories. The first theme I mentioned just now, the doubt on Ptolemy, in 850, Al-Farghani wrote Kitab fi Jawami, meaning a compendium of the science of stars. This book primarily gave a summary of Ptolemaic cosmography. However, it also corrected Ptolemy's based on findings of earlier Arab astronomers. Al-Farghani gave revised values for the obliquity of the ecliptic, the precessional movement of the apogee of the sun and the moon, and the circumference of the earth. The book was widely circulated throughout the Muslim world and translated into Latin. Second is the Egyptian astronomer Ibn Yunus, who found fault in Ptolemy's calculations about the planet's movement and their peculiarity in the late 10th century. Ptolemy calculated that Earth's wobble or orbit around its axis, otherwise known as precession, varied 1 degree every 100 years. But Ibn Yunus contradicted this finding by calculating that it was instead 1 degree every 71 years. The second theme is the Earth rotation. At the Maraga and Samarkand observatories, the Earth's rotation was discussed by Al-Khatibi, Tusi, and Kushji. The arguments and evidence used by Tusi and Kushji resemble those used by Copernicus to support the Earth's motion, hence supporting the heliocentrism theory rather than geocentrism. Heliocentrism meaning that the Sun as the center of the universe, rather than geocentrism stating that the Earth is at the center of the universe. The third theme is the alternative geocentric systems. Nur al-Din considered the Ptolemaic model mathematical and not physical. Al-Bitruji proposed a theory on planetary motion in which he wished to avoid both epicycles and eccentrics. He was unsuccessful in replacing Ptolemy's planetary model, as the numerical predictions on the planetary position in his configuration were less accurate than those of the Ptolemaic model. But one original aspect of Al-Bitruji's system is his proposal of a physical cause of celestial motion. It contradicts the Aristotelian idea that there is a specific kind of dynamics for each world, applying instead the same dynamics to the sublunar and the celestial world. The third stage is the later period. In the late 13th century, Nasir al-Din al-Tusi created the Tusi couple. Other notable astronomers from the later medieval periods include Mu'ayya al-Din, Qutb al-Din al-Shirazi, Sadr al-Sharia al-Bukhari, Ibn al-Shatir, and Ali al-Kushji. In the 15th century, the Timurid ruler Uluh Beh of Samarkand established his court as a center of patronage for astronomy. He studied it in his youth, and in 1420 ordered the construction of Ulu Beh Observatory, now contemporarily in Uzbekistan, which produced a new set of astronomical tables, as well as contributing to other scientific and mathematical advances. Several major astronomical works were produced in the early 16th century, including ones by Abdul Ali al-Birjandi and Shams al-Din al-Khafri. However, the vast majority of works written in this and later periods in the history of Islamic sciences are yet to be studied.
Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is MUHAMAD bin JOHAR. Today I would like to present about the figures in the field of astronomy. So the first one is Maryam Astrolabi. Maryam Astrolabi her real name was Al-Ijliyah Binti Al-Ijli Al-Astrolabi, the most poised and ingenious scientist under the Umayyad Caliphate. She was the woman who excelled in the astronomical and engineering field of science during the golden age of Islam. He played a significant role in the invention of astrolabe. Okay, then there's hardly any defined sources that can give the exact source of her lifespan, but it's generally acknowledged that she operated around 944 to 967 AD in Syria, according to the Kitab al-Fihrish. Next, we would like to move on to the second one is Abu Ishaq al-Zarqali. His real name was Abu Ishaq Ibrahim Ibn Yahya al-Naqash al-Zarqali al-Tujibi. He lived in Toledo, Al-Andalus, then he moved to Cordoba. He known as Arzekel or Arsekelis in Europe. His work were popular there and were taught in Western University for centuries. He was born in 1029 CE and died 58 years later in 1087 century. During his lifetime, there lots of invention, and creation that flourished in the astronomy's world in both medieval and modern eras. Ibn al-Zarqullah served under his patron like Abu al-Qasim, Sa'id al-Andalusi, and Sultan al-Ma'mun, the rulers of Taifa of Toledo. His work, Al-Manak of Arzaquli, Al-Madkhal fi Ilmi al-Nujum, the introduction of astrology. Second one is Al-Amal bi al-Sahifa al-Zijiyah, the working paper of astronomical calendars. The third one is Risalat fi Tariqat Istiqdam al-Fiha al-Mushtarakah li Jami'a al-Murad, the treatise in the way of using shared tablet, Safiya of all attitude. Then I would like to move to third figures of Abdul Ar-Rahman As-Sufi. His real name was Abdul Ar-Rahman As-Sufi. Astrologist in the era of Buwayhid Caliphate known as Az-Zofi or Az-Zofi Arabus in the Western field of knowledge. He was Persian astronomers. The lunar crater Azophi and the minor planet 12621 Asophytums were named after him. He, his famous book was the Book of Fixed Star in 964, describing his work both in textual description and pictures. He put his effort in the studies of astrological observed at the altitude of 32.7 degrees in Isfahan. Az-Zofi defined the large Magellantic cloud which is visible from Yaman. It is not far from Isfahan. Okay, so this one is will continue by our friend. So that's all for me. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Okay, I will continue our group presentation under the topic the contribution of Muslims in astronomy. Okay, as we all know that Muslim astronomers have conducted many research and also foundations that can be traced back to the 10th century until to the 15th century. Okay, among the biggest contribution that we can say is the astrolabes. Even though astrolabes derive from the Greek word means star taker, which mean origin for the Greek civilization, however, the Muslim astronomer have developed and expand the function of the astrolabes for just within the limit previously within the limits of the Greeks, only limits to calculate certain position of the suns, moons, and planets. But within the Muslim civilization, Muslim astronomers managed to expand its function, which make them can be used to calculate the direction of Kaaba, to calculate the position of suns, moons, and planets far from the previous function by degrees. Okay. As you can see, the astrolabe was meticulously engineered for several bars, disk, and star charts with the purpose of triangulating, surveying the depending local altitude based on the local time, also known as the medieval computer for the calculation related above mentioned. Okay, next, okay, the direction of Kaaba and prior times. This is a most important contribution of within the Muslim world because by using the astronomical knowledge, we can pinpoint the direction of Kaaba and calculate the time for the prayers. By using astrolabe, they easily identify the right direction, which is essentially for the Qibla, and also the moon's position can be referred to determine 5 specific times of the prayers. Okay, next, this is among the calculation that have been made by our Muslim astronomers, Al-Biruni, regarding the solar day, or solar year. 365 days, 5 hours, 46 minutes, and 34 seconds, which amazingly 2 minutes and 32 seconds off for the modern time. How great it can be. And also the moon craters and planets. Some of the Muslim astronomers' name have been immortalized as the name of the moon craters. Yes, because the moon has many craters, and some of the craters have been named within the Arabic name, which refer to the Muslim astronomers. The reason behind their naming were to acknowledge their contribution to the field of astronomy. Example, Az-Zofi from the Abdurrahman As-Sufi, Razashel, Al-Zahrawi, Al-Battegnius, Al-Batani, Al-Faraganis, Al-Faragani, and others. Even minor planet or asteroid also named after the Muslim scholars such as 12621 Al-Sufi, which is based from the Abdurrahman As-Sufi. Okay, next, the epicycle of the planets. Okay, astronomers such as Al-Zakari, Ibn Athir, and Al-Tusi studied the epicycle of the planets. What is the mean the epicycle? Planetary orbits that have been mentioned in the Ptolemaic model. As we know, actually, most of the Muslim astronomers always refer back to the Ptolemy, the Greek scholars, the Greek astronomers, within his book Almagest, which this epicycle have been proposed by Ptolemy, but Muslim scholars find some of the problem, uh, especially Azakari ibn Athir and Al-Tusi. Al-Tusi proposed new technique, which is called Tusi couple. The image can be seen here, how the use of a two circular, which circulate every time to pinpoint the circumnavigation, not circumnavigation, the rotation of the planet within their orbits. This model inspired Ibn Athir's, another Muslim scholars, geocentric model based on the Earth itself, and also Copernicus heliocentric model. Okay, next. These are some of the example of the contribution by the Muslim astronomers. First one, the Earth's circumference. Earth's circumference, as you can see here, was invented by Al-Biruni using the knowledge of astronomy and trigonometry, or also geometry. He tried to calculate the radius and Earth's circumference by sitting on the top of the mountain, and then try to see the horizon of the sun, and then you can use the Pythagoras theorem and the three square, then you get the circumference. Okay, the Earth's circumference also used by the another scholars, Al-Farghani, which his calculation also used by the Columbus to estimate the Earth's circumference during his voyage. And then the next one, the constellation, the Taurus. This is one of the writings of and Muslim astronomers named Al-Batani. And also another one, the phases of moon, proposed by Ibn Athir. Okay, that's all from me regarding the contribution of Muslims in astronomy. My friend will present next about another topics. Thank you.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I will continue to present about the impact of Islamic astronomy to other civilization, focusing on Western civilization. Right. First of all, Islamic civilization has made impacts to other civilization, including to Western civilization, and been proven by scholars from both the West and Islamic world. Although some their scholars still deny it with arrogance. In the golden age of Islamic civilization, Europe was still plagued by various problems and far behind the Islamic civilization. Thus, Europe was still in their Middle Age or medieval, and also known as their Dark Age. According to Weaver, through Sicily and Andalus, Islamic civilization empowered Europe in their field of science and knowledge from the ancient mentality of the Dark Ages, where science was constrained by the church. In other words, Europe was still control their people mentality by the church. Next, the impacts of astronomy during the golden age of Islamic civilization can be seen in a few of main things, such as to propose a new planetary theory. For example, Nasir ad-Din al-Tusi and Qutb ad-Din al-Shirazi has renewed the theory of stars or planets introduced by Greek astronomer known as Ptolemy. The creative contribution designed by astronomer in the heyday of Islamic civilization, or the golden age of Islamic civilization, can be clearly seen as the invention of astrolabes. That's one of the many inventions that be made by Muslim thinker on that time. The astrolabes has been used by European up to 12th century. By using this tool, they had determined the size of the Earth by more accurate than what the Greek has done before. As the Solaribus was firstly designed by the Greek and being improved by the Muslim thinker and scholar. In addition, during 11th century, an Andalusian Ali bin Khalaf has created an universal disk that is a spheres of a spherographic projects on a upright plane on with an eclipse point. With that, the the tool can be used uh, everywhere, and it can measure accurately. Okay, next, the works written by the astronomer in the era of Islamic civilization also gave impact to the Western civilization. Some Western astronomical terms has been borrowed from Arabic, such as akrab, al-jadi, al-tay, denib, paket, azimuh, nazir, dan zenith. The words in Arabic are akrab, al-jadi, al-tayr, denab, farakat, al-subut, nazir, and al-sanid. The transcript of astronomer of the golden age of Islamic civilization are still being used till today, and studied by other scholars such as David A. King and George Saliba. Among the works of well-known astronomer and used as a textbook is Al-Khwarizmi's works, which is Al-Mukhtasar fi Hasab Al-Jabr wa Al-Mukabala. This book greatly influenced the thinking of European scholars. It was later translated into Latin by Robert Kaiser in 535 Hijrah or 1140 century, with the title of Liber al-Jibras et al-Mukabala, and in 1247 Hijri, it was been translated into the English by Frederick Rosen. Okay, the last one. The question that needed to be answered is how the Islamic civilization influenced Western civilization. This matter has been answered indirectly in previous discussion about the achievements of Islamic civilization. The astronomy in the era of Islamic civilization became the catalyst for modern astronomy today by correcting and improving Greek astronomy by creating and linking mathematics to explain the movement of objects in the sky, as well as making systematic observation in the glory day of Islamic civilization. This is all from me. We pass to the next presenter. Thank you.
Be that as it may, to conclude all this, although as you can see, the Muslims adapted and translated their work mostly from another foreign culture, mostly another from foreign religion, like from the Indians and the Greek. And just because of that, it doesn't mean that the sources something that we should be ignored, something that we should be put aside just because they hold different kind of belief from us, just because they believe in different kind of God from us. To me, one must possess knowledge, despite the originality of it, despite who found it, never mind who found it first, never mind who put their name on it first, and never mind if the person who found it was non-Muslim. And it doesn't matter, as long as the knowledge, you can ensure the validity and the authenticity, and it must in line with Islamic teaching. And to me, there is so much to this world that meets the eye. There is so much to this universe. So by grasping into different kind of knowledge, different kind of sources, only help us, make us closer to God. And it is also that we human, everything that happened in this world is beyond our human comprehension. So that's all from me. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum.